Next up, we're going to look at the cell. We're going to look at some of the organelles and a lot of the medical terms that are associated with it. Okay, so this is a cartoon version of a cell. And so you can see it's that nice little sort of circular oval shape, and we're going to look at some of the different parts that we find inside of a cell. I'm not going to really get into any functions for this particular section, but we are going to look at some med terms that go along with each of these individual parts. You should be able to identify the things that you're seeing within inside of a cell. Okay, so first up, let's actually just take a look at some of the terms for the cell. So CYTO or CYTO is a medical root term for the cell. You may also see it as cyte, C-Y-T-E, as a suffix. And if you go back to remember what root terms versus suffixes and where they're located, it really doesn't matter if it's in the middle of the word or at the end of the word. If it's CYT or CYTE at the end is the suffix, they both refer to the cell. All right, let's come in a little closer. Next, we have this giant purple circle in the center of the cell, and this is the nucleus. The root term for the nucleus is first the very obvious one, which is nucleo. Looks just like the word nucleus, okay, and that is the center portion of the cell. There is, however, a second root term that refers to the nucleus, and that is the term karyo, K-A-R-Y-O, karyo. Inside of that nucleus, we're going to find some things like RNA, which stands for ribonucleic acid, and DNA, which stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. So if you were ever curious as to what those two abbreviations stood for, okay, here you go. You can see them right on the screen. Okay, next up, just next to that nucleus, it is this more bluish colors. We have an abbreviation called the ER, and that stands for endoplasmic reticulum, which is what's being shown here. All right, so what is endoplasmic reticulum? It does help with some protein breakdown. I'm not going to get super involved in the physiology portion of this lecture, but ER is its abbreviation for endoplasmic reticulum. There are two types. There are smooth and there are rough. And smooth is this sort that does not have these little dark navy circles attached to it, whereas rough is this portion that has this nice dark circles attached to the end. Next, this little brown or gold sort of towards the bottom of the slide is referred to as the Golgi apparatus. All right, hopefully this one you remember from Once Upon a Time. I think this is the one fact that most of us remember from high school. It does look like a little kidney bean. You are going to find several throughout the cell, so I'm just sort of highlighting one here. This is the mitochondria. We often know the first fact about it is the powerhouse of the cell. It does, in fact, help us to make all of the energy that our body needs to survive. Mito, M-I-T-O, which is a root term, refers to being thread-like. Okay, so thread-like or very thin. Okay, so thread-like. We have these very little circles inside of the cell. This one I'm pointing to is a little bit teal green. It is a peroxisome. And I want to point out just the suffix portion here is new to us. S-O-M-E is a suffix, or some is a suffix, refers to a small body. And so a peroxisome is a small circular body that is found within a cell. These more pink colored ones, okay, are called a lysosome. And again, remember that some as a suffix, S-O-M-E. If you need to take a look at your word list, please do so. Refers to a body. So it's a nice circular body or portion within the cell. Next up in the background, while they haven't been really obvious, I've highlighted one here, but you can kind of see them throughout the whole background of the cell. These are things called microtubules. They do help things to move about the cell and to help the cell keep its structure. And remember, micro as a prefix, right? M-I-C-R-O refers to being very small. And in fact, they are microscopic or quite small, and they're fairly faint inside the cell, but they still serve an important function for us. Also in the background is something called a microfilament, even thinner than that microtubule. And again, micro referred to being very small. So for a med term, what I would hope you understand is that both of these objects are exceptionally small and very tough to see inside of a microscope and in the background. So micro referring to being a small element. Next up,